Hello, I'm Miss Emily. So nice to see you again. I went for a walk today. Oh, such a lovely day to do so. I hope you're having a lovely day too. You know, Mr. Walt Whitman talked very often about traveling. And one of his poems, he spoke about traveling from his home on Long Island, the home that's known today as Walt Whitman Birthplace. Walt was born there in 1819, and he lived there until only 1823, when his parents and the rest of his family moved into Brooklyn for better opportunities. Nevertheless, when he got older, he still never forgot his home. And he wrote a poem called Starting from Paumanok. Now, Paumanok was the old Native American name for Long Island. Paumanok meant land of tribute or fish-shaped land. And it was called the land of tribute because all of the different tribes that were here on Long Island were compelled to pay tribute to the Native Americans up in Connecticut. Well, that was a very, very long time ago. But the name Paumanok stuck, and definitely stuck with Walt Whitman. This is what he wrote in a poem that begins starting from Paumanok. Starting from fish-shaped Paumanok, where I was born, well begotten and raised by a perfect mother, after roaming many lands, lover of populous pavements, dweller in Manhattan, my city, or on southern savannas, or a soldier camped or carrying my knapsack and gun, or a miner in California, or rude in my home in Dakota's woods, my diet meat, my drink from the spring, or withdrawn to muse and meditate in some deep recess, far from the clank of crowds, intervals passing wrapped and happy, aware of the fresh, free giver, the flowing Missouri, aware of mighty Niagara, aware of the buffalo herds grazing the plains, the hirsute and strong-breasted bull, of earth, rocks, fifth-month flowers, experienced stars, rain, snow, my amaze, having studied the mockingbird's tones and the flight of the mountain hawk, and heard at dawn the unrivaled one, the hermit thrush from the swamp cedars. Solitary, singing in the west, I strike up for a new world. Well, I think that anyone, as they get older, wants to strike out for the new world. But I thought you might be interested this morning in hearing a little bit about what it might have been like growing up in that little house in West Hills, New York. In the year 1819, it was only about 36 years after the end of the American Revolution. The British were no longer on Long Island, but people were still finding it very hard to make a living. And houses were very simple, and people had the most basic of things that they handled. Everyone had chickens, and everyone had chores. Let me tell you a little bit about what life was like in 1819. Well, Walt Whitman, just like many other people, was born in his home. There was a little room, and his mother and father would keep him in a cradle right next to them in their bedroom. But as Walt grew up, even from a very, very young age, maybe even 2, he was expected to help out with the chores. Now, certainly he wasn't going to be chopping wood, although that was something that everybody needed to do. No, your chores grew as you grew older. So as Walt grew older, one of the most important chores, I would assume, was the fetching of water. Now, if you go to Walt Whitman Birthplace, you'll see a well right in the front yard. And that well was where they got their water. Water had to be gotten many, many times during the day. It needed to be gotten because it was necessary for so many things. It was necessary for cooking. It was necessary to wash dishes and to rinse them. It was necessary for washing yourself. And so water was needed many times a day. Sometimes it was left to be cold, as when you rinsed your dishes away from the soap. But other times it needed to be heated. And it would be heated in a great big cauldron, a huge pot that would be put over the fireplace. And it took hours for that fireplace to make that water hot. Now, if you did not keep that fire going, you were not going to have hot water to bathe in. You weren't going to have hot water to cook with. And worst of all, you might not be able to cook your food. So it was a very, very important thing for that fire to be kept going all day long. And very young children were required to gather as much wood as they could. And they used it as fuel so that they could make the fire last all day long. Many people had farms, and you didn't just farm yourself. You perhaps had other people to help you, just as you would go and help other people on their farms. And because of that, Mrs. Whitman, Sr., needed to cook meals at lunchtime and at dinner time, although they called them dinner in the middle of the day and supper at night. And if there were people who were helping her husband on the farm, she needed to cook for them. So there needed to be plenty of food, particularly for men that were working so hard. Children would be fetching water. They would be responsible for sometimes washing some simple things of their own clothing. They didn't have televisions or radios. They only had themselves. And often, they didn't have the opportunity to play. They also didn't always have the opportunity to go to school like you do. You see, you were needed on the farm. And when you went to school, it was not required. It was a privilege. But think about this, boys and girls. If you're on the farm all the time, do you really think that you're going to see your friends all that often? No. So you wanted to go to the farm and finish your chores as early as you possibly could so that you could run to school and get to see your friends. Oh, living back in 1819 was not easy. There was something that you have today that we take really for granted, but they did not have then. And that was running water, plumbing. So boys and girls, if you needed to go to the bathroom, you needed to go outside to a place called the outhouse. And you would take care of what you needed to take care of out there and then come on back in, even when it was freezing cold outside. So having running water today is a real luxury. And I sincerely hope that the next time I meet you, We could talk a little bit more about some of the things that children do that is more of a fun opportunity. Things like the things that they enjoyed, like going to school. Next time I see you, we'll talk about that. In the meantime, this is Miss Emily. Stay curious, everyone. Bye-bye.